Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on ATV, live on Facebook, live on Twitter and Instagram as well, live on Nisim 95.9. Tonight, we are here to talk about the season we are in. It's a season that terrifies a lot of people. For some, it comes as good news, but for most of us, it comes as very terrifying, regardless of where you live. Because this subject matter affects you and it affects everyone out there. Whether you live on a hill, whether you live on a valley, it would affect you. There are instances where what we are about talking about is able to cut people off from going to their homes and staying only in the office. At the end of the day, when we are done talking, I am sure we would have an appreciation of how things would pan out in the days, weeks, and months ahead of us. And that has to do with the rainy season which we have entered into. Yes, it's been raining. From last week, there have been showers, there have been downpours, and the experience we've had over the years repeats itself, and those who have been through that traumatic experience are left to their own fate, remembering the moments when they got to their homes and their homes had been flooded, the moment when their loved ones had been carried away by running water, rushing water, and they lost their loved ones. We have read screaming headlines. The rains are here. A couple carried away, a child carried away, a home destroyed, road blocked, washed away. All these are headlines. In the weeks ahead of us, certainly, we'll be reading the tabloids publishing. But there's a question. Is it that we don't pay attention to the perennial flooding situation we experience in the country? Is it that we are not proactive enough? Is it that our engineers are not doing what ought to be done to ensure we don't experience this anymore? Is it a matter of funding to ensure we don't have these perennial flooding situations in the country? Greater Accra region always has its fair share. The Northern region has its fair share. The Ashanti region over the years has been experiencing its fair share. Is it a matter of climate change? Is it that we are not paying attention to climate change? All these are matters we would be discussing tonight on Fact Sheets. Now, just before we start the conversation, I would want to take you through some headlines which we have read in the past. Just last week, there was a story of how the Minister, the Honorable Asenso Boache, is calling for attitudinal change when it comes to the fight against perennial flooding in this country. Now, he says that they had launched the social behavior change communication program, which was to disabuse people's minds when it comes to how we dump refuse and rubbish into drainage systems in the country. But is that the solution to the problem? Again, I'll try and remind all of us of screaming headlines we have seen in the past as well. There was one which caught my attention. Akufo-Addo's government has spent 230 million Ghana cedis to prevent floods. And so we ask, if we have been able to spend 230 million cedis on the issue of flooding, why does Accra, Kumasi, the Northern region, why does it still flood? Again, we are told project to end Odona flooding to begin in December. This was in 2021, somewhere around May, that we were told this. What has happened to the Odona project, where we are told that we are not going to experience this anymore? We are told from the story, and this is a report in the Daily Graphic, and I'll attempt to read some of it to our viewers and our listeners. It says the government was currently in the process of recruiting consultants and contractors to execute the projects, which will be funded by a $200 million World Bank loan. Where are we with that project? Especially at a time when just 2 hours of downpour, we had Accra flooding. What happens when we enter into May, June, July, when the downpour is very heavy? Tonight, that's our focus on Fact Sheet. The rains, the rains, the rains, and the rains. Are we ready for the flood we shall be experiencing? There are popular areas that we know are flood-prone areas. What steps are being taken? Would it be the usual NADMO situation and divide the rice, the oil, maybe some bed sheets and some mattresses, and that's it? We'll try to understand the problem with our country when it comes to flooding. Let's not also forget the tidal waves which have hit the people in the Volta region. It's also been repetitive. And so tonight, that forms our basis for a discussion on flooding in Ghana. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Fact Sheets live on ETV Live on Happy 98.9, live on Nisim 95.9 and 100.1 live on Facebook as well. We'll be glad to hear your thoughts on the perennial flooding situation in Accra, which we envisage would be a matter that would dominate the media space in the weeks and months ahead of us, even as we enter into the heavy rainfall season. The Ghana Meteorological Agency has been forecasting and has been giving us hints as to the rainfall pattern we might be experiencing. Now, this morning when we spoke to them, they indicated the northern region may experience some heavy downpour, and so the people must be ready for it. We also do know around these times, that's when you get to hear of the Bagri Dam being open. What fates are, awaits the people in these regions? You remember the story of the Polugu Dam? What has happened to it, as this was supposed to salvage the situation in these areas? That forms the basis for our conversation as well. And so I welcome you to the conversation. My name is Samuel Shen. And tonight on the show, we'll be joined by guests who have better understanding and appreciation of the, matter that we would be discussing. And so we will start with an engineer who has an understanding of the situation when it comes to flooding in Ghana, as to what really is the problem with our nation. He would give us his thoughts on the matter. And we are joined by Engineer Abdullah Mahama to share his thoughts with us. Engineer, good evening and thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, sir, good evening.
I'm hoping you're doing well tonight, sir.
Yeah, I'm fine.
You're fine. All right, sir. So let's begin with your own reaction when, after just an hour or two's downpour, we had Accra flooding, with the assurances which had been given us in 2021 and the 2020 that we were not going to experience this again. How did you react when you saw the videos and footages on social media with Accra flooding?
I didn't hear the last bit of.
Come again?
I didn't hear the last bit. You said the 2020, 2021.
I was asking about your reaction, especially when there had been assurances that government was going to do any and everything possible to ensure we don't witness this anymore.
Well, I'll say a good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners. I'm not surprised about the level of water that is inundating the lands, the land surface. Because we are doing a lot of the talking, but the action is very little. So as long as the country is doing some same, let's say they are putting a certain behavioral pattern and they are expecting a different result, it's not going to come anytime soon. We're not going to witness any drastic change positively in the field because of just making comments here and there and doing very little to salvage the situation. The central government should not be held totally accountable for the level of floods that we witness within our neighborhood. A lot more has to be done by the local authorities.
Okay.
And it's better that we start to channel our attention to the local authorities. And I think when we focus on that side, we can make some very important progress in trying to reduce the inundation of the water levels on our surfaces in Accra and all other capitals.
It's interesting. It's interesting the tangent you have taken, engineer, because you are saying that the problem must not be left at the doorstep of the central government, but should be with that of the local assemblies.
Yes.
But have they got the capacity to embark on these projects we are talking about?
The very few things that the assemblies have to do is, they have the physical planning department. When somebody comes to seek for permit for a construction, it is only proper that by this time, the bylaws of almost all the assemblies in the capital would have introduced a component which is taking off the hard surfaces of the factories and making use of greens. Because as of now, we have a lot of companies who get permit from the assemblies, and all of them are lining their compounds with concrete. Now, velocity discharge, when you discharge water, it only has to do with a velocity and an area. The wider the area, the wider or the deeper the infiltration. In this case, if the area we are dealing with has a lot more percolative surface, that is, we have not actually covered the whole places with concrete and tile, then we would have a lot of seepage of or infiltration of water into the soils. But if the assemblies are going to sit down and will not be able to really negotiate technically with almost all the companies and compounds, I mean individual compounds in Accra, which are suddenly metamorphosed from grass or gravel to concrete. If you have more than half of the compounds in Accra being concrete, it means you are reducing the level of infiltration of water by more than half. So if 100 houses have left their houses with grass and then gravel, let's say every house is able to absorb 1,000 liters of water into the soil. Now, if it rains for, like, say, an hour, and everybody's catchment area is able to, the water that drops directly on people's compound is about 600 liters per hour. And then your house your house compound can take 1,000 liters per hour. It means you're not going to have runoff discharging water from your house onto the compound of other people or onto the road. But if everybody decides that now the beautiful thing is to line our house with all concrete and tile, no matter the number of concrete drains that you do, expansion of our drains, widening of our drains, the discharge is going to increase because the area for infiltration has reduced. And that's one of the major things. That doesn't come from the government, the central government, but rather the district, municipal, and metropolitan assemblies, who are the ones giving direct permit to any development, with the exception of a road or a bridge or, let me say, a storm drain, which is coming directly from the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and coming from the Works and Housing, and coming from the roads and highways. Rather than that, any other edifice you see within any area in the country, the first place that is supposed to go is the local assembly. Because in the Land Use and Special Planning Act of 2016, it says that any developer who intends to do any development, the first thing to do is to approach the assembly. And the assembly has some requirements from you. They will demand you to bring your drawings, your whole architectural drawing, a structural drawing, your layout. That is a problem. So if the layout that everybody is bringing is concrete, and you can't start to lobby or make sure that even companies or factories would have isolated driveways to either pavement or concrete, and the whole other compound will be done with grass, then we can quadruple the area of Odo. But the water that will come to Odo cannot be contained by the Odo. That's why you're going to have a lot of flood, and it will take a longer time before the water will seep through the ground because the area for infiltration is less.
Well, there are two things that come to mind with your submission you are making as to people using concrete in their homes, styling their homes and all. Is that to suggest that the assembly can have a say as to how, when my architect is designing my home for me, how I should go about either greening or concretizing or tiling my room?
Yeah, your room
or my house.
Is not your room is not a problem. Okay, let me tell you this. When you go to Côte d'Ivoire, our neighbors, the laws are so explicit that in the event that you want to even cut a tree from your compound, your own house, you have to seek the permit. I'm sure you're surprised. To cut a tree on your own compound, you have to seek for approval. Outside the country, when you are in your bedroom and you want to partition your bedroom, you want to divide your room into two, within your room, you seek for approval. You cannot do it on your own because all those things have to be documented. In the event that there's a fire outbreak, when the fire service is coming to that area, they are already aware of how your layout is, so that they will know how to tackle based on the report that will be given to them. You get it? So if we decide that we will allow everyone to use his own discretion because it is his compound, we will not make any headway.
But you are citing a country where the law is clear as to what should be done when one is building. In our case, is the law that clear as to how the compound of every home must be?
That is why I'm telling you that when you go and read the Ghana building regulation, I can't on top of my head just give you the exact law. But when you go through the building regulation, 1630, right? You would find out that the siting of your house, the distance from the external wall to when the building should start, the type of land that you have, the space you are supposed to live within the house, the area that the building is supposed to cover, all these are explicit on the tables at the assembly in the Ghana building regulation, LI 1630. So if the assemblies keep on sleeping, don't expect to see any different thing in Accra. The laws are so beautiful. There's one of the laws that I'll just paraphrase for you once again. I've been paraphrasing this law for a very long time. When you read the Land Use and Spatial Planning Act of 2016, it has given us the Act 119 says that when an officer of the assembly may, without notification to the developer, alter, abate, remove, or demolish the structure, if that structure is causing a nuisance to the environment or interferes with the public right of space. So it doesn't mean that because you own a land somewhere, you can decide to construct any building and block natural flows because the land belongs to you. At the event, in the heat of the moment, the authorized officers may, without notification to the developer, either they will alter the design, they have to break some parts of the design, or demolish the structure so that it will save lives and property. But we don't read our laws in this country very well, brother. If you read the laws of the building regulations in Ghana, you'll be amazed that almost every building in Accra, which is being constructed, with exception of very few ones, are all sidestepping the laws of the land and doing what pleases them.
Now, let's come to the supervisory role of these local assemblies that you talk about. In a situation where, in this country, we know the number of buildings that spring up overnight at a time that there are indications on the wall that work has to stop. By the next morning, it's up. How does the assembly control the springing up of these buildings in the first place and then ensuring they conform?
Yeah, but you see, if the assembly is mobile, all this information that they need would be given to them. When you see that the house has written on its stop work, produce permit, I am told that in some instances, it is the same developers who do that just so that they can distract the people who are coming for inspection. But if your books are well, you have all your books documented properly, you will know the houses that you have given approval for or not. Let me give you one of the laws covering the, what you call the assembly in terms of permit. It said permit. The law is Act 113A. A person shall not undertake any physical development of land within a district unless that person has been issued with a permit by the district assembly within the jurisdiction in which the land is situated. But you and I have seen a lot of people who are constructing without this basic requirement. And in the event that the person has constructed the building and had been seen by the assembly, there are laws in the same act, the Act 2016 at 925, that gives the assembly the power to just take the person to court. The assembly. When was the last time you heard the assembly suing people other than just going to write stop work produce permits? Because there are explicit fines when the assembly decides to take you to court, and then the court will remove the clauses in the act for the people to be fined. In some of the instances, I don't know whether I can get it off head, but the penalty for constructing or violating the laws is like 2 years imprisonment and then some fine. I think I'll get it, but you can go for the fine and then the sentence at the same time. Minimum is 2 years, maximum is 4 years. That I know.
Now,
our assemblies in the country have to wake up nicely and start to work. But this year's rains, it will come again, and it will be more than what we witnessed last year. This morning, I got an interview to one of the sister stations, and I told them to go and check what I said somewhere on the 29th day of March 2022. I spoke about the wager hill coming down this year bigger than before. Already, after 13 days, when I posted that on my Twitter wall or Twitter handle, it has happened. The first one, the first rain, it's higher than what we had last year. And my colleagues were asking me, how did I get to know? How was I able to preempt? And I said the construction is ongoing. There was a documentary that was carried out between myself and some stations in Accra. And the title of the documentary was Time Ticking Bomb at Wager. Let me tell you this. In the next coming rain, this year's rain, if you are not lucky, the rain would bring the debris from the Wager area that will go across the two carriageways of both the Kaswa bound and Accra bound. There will be a total blockage of the whole stretch of the two carriageway in and out. And that is where maybe, just maybe, we'll sit up and know that there's a danger looming at the top of the Wager Mountain because of the fracture of the mountain, the normal routine earth tremor, and the fact that once it has been fractured and construction is still going on somewhere on top of the mountain, and once the rains come, the rocks or the weather rocks will be very heavy and they will give way. It's so sad that you still see fresh construction ongoing. And I see churches at the top there. And you can imagine, just imagine that in the morning a church has gone, or it's a Sunday morning and the congregation is full, and it starts to rain. How will be the fate of this country? My brother.
Well, let's jump a little further and try to understand the general problem. For me, as much as you would want to situate the conversation at the doorstep of the local assemblies, I have heard many say that they are incapacitated in being able to do so. You can find out how many assemblies have pickups to even go around to check the areas to ensure there's compliance. The money that they may have in their kitty to even fuel this, to go and go with their task force? There are so many reasons that would be given. But over the years...
I don't want to buy those reasons.
You don't want to buy those reasons?
Yeah, because of the experience I'm having most of the assembly. If you talk about the very rural areas, I'll tend to side with you, because even in those areas, there's no much construction that will be injurious to the space, the environment, or the individuals. Most of these things are centered in the metropolitan and cosmopolitan areas, where movement is not a problem for the assembly. You see, when you go to the assembly, you pay for even an inspection. They charge you for coming to inspect your land. And they make sure that whatever they are charging you, it's not for just one inspection, it's a routine one. They shouldn't hide behind the fact that government is not giving them money, or they don't have pickup to move around. But you see,
engineer, how many people go to the assembly for these inspections? Let's be real. I mean, somebody goes to buy a land from a family, or buys it from some chief. Chief says, okay, I've sold the land to you. Family says, I've sold the land to you. He or she may pay some land gas for some digging fee. And then that's it. Building starts springing up. How many people go back to the assembly for the correct thing to be done?
That's why I was telling you that most of the time we are dealing with the cosmopolitan areas where we have a bit of concentration. And so those people are mobile. If you go to assembly to do your own investigation, I'm sure you come back very disappointed. Some of those things are overlooked right from the top of the assemblies. In some areas, you would go and let's start to clear the facts well, so that we'll just put it in context. You go to an assembly. Of course, I've been to a lot of assemblies to confront them about some of the development that are ongoing. You get to know that in one breath, the developer has come to see the MCE. And the MCE has forced the decision down the throat of the planning officer and the engineer, the works head at the assembly.
Okay.
In some instances, it's between the engineer, the planning officer, who have taken the lead, and they have convinced the chief executive to also give his consent. You know the number of people that make the body? The body is made up of about 11 or 13 individual professionals. The MCE is the chair, obviously. There's a physical planning officer. There's another planning officer. There is the works head of the assembly. There's the NADMO officer, coordinator. There are 2 members of the assemblymen appointed by the assembly caucus. There is a fire service. There's a national security. Who constitute the body for the approval of permit.
Now,
it is that. And then you made mention of something from the north. The dams that were supposed to have been constructed in the north.
Yeah.
In my view, well, we know that a lot of them were disappointing anyway. We know that a lot of the dams were not successful. Whether they went to do shallow wells or what, I don't know. How can we have rainfall in the north and we'll have flood, and then ironically, 3 months afterwards, we'll have droughts? And constantly, we still not to learn anything about it. And professionals are sent to go and construct dams. They go and do shallow construction. And as we speak, we have seen the evidence that a lot of the construction was not done properly. And nobody, absolutely nobody, has been blacklisted or have been sent to court for causing financial loss to the country. If those designs, let me give maybe a suggestion or a proper solution to government. We know the terrain in the north. We know the history of the flood. We know the history of when the Baghdad Dam is opened in Burkina Faso. We know the topography of the northern region of powers. We'll be able to channel the low-lying areas and connect them to where we're going to have the construction of the dams. So in the event when the floods are coming and they are intercepted at the low-lying areas, most of the well-designed deep dams would intercept the water. And the one that will flow across the dams will be shallow, not to cause any of such devastations. But as I stand here, I don't know what has happened, my brother.
So if what you say is anything to work with, then why is the picture always painted as if the major problem of Accra is the Odo River, and that if the Odo River is dredged, we wouldn't have any situation of flooding in the city. Why is that picture always being painted?
The Odo River is almost getting to 20 years, right? The President Kufuor's time, His Excellency constructed that one with Interbetin, the company who did the Cape Coast Hospital. Now, this company had a design. So let's say at the time of the design, they have factored the environment, the total paved and unpaved areas in Accra. And let's say the Odo was supposed to be maybe 10 meters wide, but they anticipated for future development, and they went about 20 meters wide. The activities, like that I told you earlier about the concreting of houses, that has just been multiplied, would bring a lot of runoff to the Odo. Now, if you go and check some of the things that I said about the Odo, when it rains, nobody puts silt into a gutter. Nobody will put sand in a gutter. I hope you bear with me on that one.
Yeah, I know that.
But when you see polythene bags, you can talk about that one.
True.
But the fact that we have silt, over 60-70% of the Odo filled with silt, it means that there is something we're not doing upstream. Now, if you look at Abofu to ABC, New Plan, Brekusu area there, the whole area had not been lined yet with the concrete. So obviously, when the rains are so high, it carries all the sand from Brekusu there down through Dome, through Kwabenya, through Christian Village, and then connect to the Caprice area to the Abofu. If you look at the media center from Abofu, for the past 5 years, I think you may go on my Twitter and see one article that I've been reminding the Ayawaso Metro that the slabs at the Abofu end of the Odo had collapsed. More than 20 of the slabs have collapsed, exposing the earth to the dam or the Odo River. Now, so whenever it's raining and all that sand is being eroded into the Abofu storm drain, you witness all that at the circle area. So we go and spend so much money in desilting the circle area, when in fact 20 of the slabs have been removed for more than 7 to 8 years around the Abofu stretch, and it has not been done.
Interesting. Engineer,
So,
we would go for a breather, and then when we come back, we will continue the conversation so as to understand the way forward. Now that whether we like it or not, the indicators are there that we would experience downpour and would experience flooding in most of the usual flood-prone areas in the days ahead of us. We'll be right back. And you're welcome back to Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1, live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. We are talking about flooding. Usually, we'll contextualize to say flooding in Accra, but now the flooding has not been only in Accra. Ashanti region experiences its own fair share of flooding. Northern region experiences its own fair share of the flooding. Volta region has been experiencing its own tidal waves, which we don't know whether we should say it's as a result of climate change, whether it's as a result of, the rains, or whether it's as a result of sand weeding or whatever human activities that may be causing this. But we are concerned, we are worried, because in the days ahead of us, it would be for journalists to be risking their lives to go to these flood-prone areas to bring footages of the people who are being affected by these floods. And so we are trying to preempt what's ahead of us and, if possible, try to avert the situation. Let's see the phone lines and speak to Mr. Ayisi Boatin, who is the PRO for NADMO, and ask what preparations are in place, considering that the indicators from the Meteo is that of more rains ahead of us. Good evening, Mr. Ayisi Boatin, and thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Noda Itibuat. I'm Georgia EC.
Georgia EC, sorry. I hope you're doing well.
I'm good.
All right. So, what are the plans for, people who may be affected by, flooding in the country, seeing that the folks at, Meteorological Agency are indicating that we should be bracing up for more downpour?
Yeah, thank you. Those living in flood-prone areas, we've taken steps collaborating with the assemblies to do some desilting in some drains. Government has also taken a major step with the continuous dredging of the Odo River. There are constructions of storm drains in parts of the Asante region, especially Kumasi, in a place where normally every year there's flooding that affects them around the Pilili area. So these are steps that are being taken. Again, we are sensitizing the people living in flood-prone zones to be aware of the effects of flooding. And then we've identified places we call safe havens, where they can move to when the flood is rising, and then seek refuge there till the rains are over, and then they get back to their places or homes to put the place in order and then move on with life.
So you made mention of some safe havens that you have found or created. That's to suggest that you have already started engaging folks living in these flood-prone areas, not so?
Yes. It's a continuous thing. The Director General, Mama Dimanprempe Honorable, has directed all the regional and district directors and officers, zonal officers of NADMO, to do that. This has been an ongoing exercise. They've identified the places, and not only identifying it, but to guide the people on how to access those places. Because sometimes you identify when the person waits in his room or house till the floods get high, and then in trying to go, it becomes difficult. The swift nature of the flood waters can pull the person away. And so we try to help them on how to access the easiest accessible routes to get to the place for their safety.
Give us a sense of these areas that I'm sure you have a big map of Ghana that you would classify as flood-prone areas. Can you give us a sense of these areas?
Yes, definitely. In Accra, we have a lot of places in Accra. For instance, Tema Community 18, Community 5, Community 3, Ashama, Lebanon is a place. We come to Accra, the Dansuma Hansonic area is a place. Fortunately, there's a very big underground tunnel there. When it chokes, that is when the flooding comes in. When it's desilted, it helps the free flow of water. The Kanishi First Light is another place. The Wejagbau area, the Tetegu area there is a flood-prone zone. These are all places in Accra, the ACP Junction, Kumasi. Because of the construction of the interchange, this is the first rains after the interchange. We will assess and see whether it's still persistent. If it's persistent, we will then still consider it as part of the place. Then you go to Kumasi, the Pelele area. There are places that we've gone there to do some research. So these are flood-prone zones in Kumasi as well. In the northern sector, we know the boundaries areas along the white and the black water are affected. Many districts are affected. About 21 to 23 districts when the Bagri Dam is spilled. And so, yes, and then just last year or two, Cape Coast also experienced some flooding, and the western region, Takrade, Shama area also experienced some flooding. So, yes, we have the architecture of the flood-prone zones.
All right, now let's stay a bit at the northern region, the three northern regions where you mentioned that there are some 26 districts that you know would be affected. Give us a sense of these safe havens that will cater for these 26 districts that you speak about. How many of these safe havens do we have in that part of Ghana?
The safe havens are peculiar, identified by in community basis or district basis. For instance, if we come to Accra, I'll go back to the northern sector. If we come to Accra, the people of Kwale Quarter, when you want to talk of safe havens, you talk about the Independence Square, you talk about the stadium, and then at Dakar, you talk about a certain cathedral there, Catholic Church cathedral there. These are identified places that people can go to seek refuge. In the northern sector, when the floods is about to set in, especially when the rains and the baggy downspillage is in, we deploy a team from the headquarters in Accra and other adjoining regions to the northern sector. So they help in collaboration with the assembly members, the chief executives, and then the chiefs and opinion leaders, identify places there where we can move the people for safety till the flood waters go. So this is a collaborative thing that we do every year.
All right, so you're giving us a sense of the Greater Accra region. You said that you're going to take us to the north.
And I've told you about the north. What we do in partnership with the assemblies and the chiefs and opinion leaders, we identify places there. It may be a classroom, it may be a church building, it may be a community center, but it is identified, and then we move the people to those places, far away from the likely to be affected areas when the spillage is there.
Considering that these areas that flood are already known, one would think that NADMO would have these specific areas that you classify as your safe havens already mapped out. Don't you have it mapped out?
They are all there. I don't have your document before me. You called me that you've been interviewing me. You didn't tell me what you were going to talk about specific things.
Chief.
So I'm not carrying the map in my mind and moving about.
No. Mr. Isi, please. I just asked a simple question. If you're unable to answer it for me, fair enough. But if you say that I don't expect you to carry it in your mind, that's below the belt.
So I'll give you the answer you want. I'm sorry. If a journalist will call and tell you, I'll be asking you on this area, you never did that. Instead, you call me, and then we are talking, and you want me to give you every detail of the issues.
And that's wrong to ask?
Is it?
And that's wrong to ask?
No, I'm giving you the answer, and you don't seem satisfied. And I'm saying, okay, I'm not carrying the documents with me.
No, but you are making it look as if my producer called you and didn't give you a hint of the conversation and where it's likely to go.
Yeah, you said we are talking about floods.
Yes, of course.
Yes, and our preparations towards the floods. And our preparations, I've told you about it. That's what you gave me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not everything that I can give you pictorial, vivid thing on. And I've given you the picture, how it is, and how the places are identified. There are a lot of places in Greater Accra that I don't have before me. I can send you later the documents, and then you yourself will get the place yourself.
I'll be glad to peruse this document. If you do send it to me, I'll be glad to peruse this document. But let's move on. And, finally, touch base with other areas that usually, if we're talking about flooding, we seldom paid attention to. Cape Coast, for that matter. Last year, it did flood in that area. What are the plans?
The plans for what?
For Cape Coast.
Of course, the officers there have been directed to sensitize the people. Where there's the need for dredging and desilting, that collaboration is done with the assemblies, and those things are done. And then community sensitization among the people. We get reports from there that sometimes people put up certain walls at places that hitherto were not flooding, but because they put up those walls, it started flooding. NADMO doesn't have the power to pull down the walls. We need to get in touch with the assemblies. They are close with the powers to do that. So when we give that report, the assembly then will take steps to assess the situation and, if need be, pull down those walls to allow free flow of water.
Now, final question would be that of evacuation.
Yeah.
Have you started evacuating people in these areas, or you have some timelines you're working with?
In which areas? The flood-prone areas?
Yes.
No, as we speak, the tidal wave issue in the K2 area, Anglong, and the Kita area, Today, our men were on grounds working to get people to safer place. And we had some difficulties with people in the Ango area. They thought they've lived within the place from their ancestors' time till today, and so they were a bit hesitant. But with the K2 South, they are cooperating and understanding. Red Cross is also there supporting, because there's a forecast by Ghana Metro that tonight or at dawn, there's likely to, we're going to have tidal waves hitting the eastern coast of Ghana. And so those three areas were the key places that are likely to be hit hard. And so we need to get them to safety. So that is there. And other places, we cannot talk of evacuation. That's why we've identified the cities that they can move to for safety. When you talk of the evacuation,
hello, Mr. Isi. All right, too bad. It looks like the line got dropped there, but we have. Hello, Mr. Isi.
Yeah, hello.
Okay, it looks like the line is a bit terrible now.
Oh, sorry. I've been. I don't know. Is it clear now?
Come again? Yeah, I think it's a bit okay. But yet, we'll thank you. Well, thank you for the information you've shared with us tonight.
Thank you.
And for making time to speak to us as well. But I would appreciate the document if you sent it, like you said. And that's George Ayisi joining us. He's the PRO for NADMO, sharing with us their plans for people who are likely to be affected by floods, in the days ahead of us. And so that's been the conversation. I will thank you for being a part of the conversation. We're hoping to have spoken to the PRO for the Ghana Meteorological Agency tonight to give us a sense of how things are likely to be. But that was not possible. And so I thank you for being a part of our conversation tonight. We'll be here, God willing, tomorrow morning for another edition of the Happy Morning Show between 5:30 and 9 a.m. The possibility of an extension of this conversation on the Happy Morning Show, God willing, tomorrow. But I thank you for tuning in to Fact Sheet tonight on ETV, on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. Good evening.